Long moves that Senate file number 37 be taken from the table.
Representative Long.
That is my motion, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
All those in favor of the Long motion to take Senate File 37 from the table, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion prevails. The clerk will report the bill. And the clerk will report the amendment that we were on.
Dameth moves to amend Senate file number 37, the unofficial engrossment. The amendment is coded DE5.
On the DE5 amendment to Senate File 37, there were a couple of folks who were on the list when the bill was laid on the table. Representative Zalesnikar and Representative Altendorf. I can give you a couple of minutes. We shifted gears rather quickly here.
Madam Speaker, what line of business are we on again?
The member from line. Representative Spudzinski, we are on Senate File 37, AKA ERA. We are on the Dameth Amendment DE5, AKA original ERA. Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I'm standing just to support the DE5, from Leader Dameth. And, you know, this really brings back equality for all. And that's what we're really talking about in this Equal Rights Amendment. This brings back the intention of the Equal Rights Amendment from my perspective, that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied by the state or political subdivision of the state on account of sex. And I think that was the intent when the ERA was originated in the 70s. And when I look through this bill and I think about a person that meant a lot to me, whose name was Hazel Wyatt, who, when she was 94 and nearing her death, I asked my grandma, what were the most important things you saw in your lifetime? And you know what she said? She said rural electrification and Title IX. That's what she said. And why would she say this farm girl? It surprised me, because my grandma didn't play sports. I didn't think she even was interested in sports. We had a farm. But what I learned was my grandma loved basketball. She loved basketball, and she wasn't able to play basketball in school. And so this bill mattered to her, and I didn't know that till she was 94 years old. And so that bill that was passed in '72 gave the same education and sports opportunities to women as it did to men. And this bill follows the original federal ERA, which was considered the gold standard. It should be the gold standard for Minnesota. And this proposed language that we're talking about that's going to change everything is not going to have equality for all. In fact, it's going to pick winners and losers, and we are not going to accomplish what the ERA meant to accomplish. And so 50 years later, following Title IX, we are in a situation where it's erasing the very things that she was thrilled to see finally happen in the state of Minnesota. It's erasing it in only 50 years. That is hardly equality for women. 50 years of sports in the state of Minnesota for women to compete, for scholarships, for opportunities. That is at risk for women today. And while I was not one of these athletes, I respect the fact of what their concerns are and understand it. And erasing those opportunities for women is not equality. It's not equality for all. And it's absolutely going to change, and a constitutional ballot and a constitutional amendment is going to completely nullify anything else we have as far as protections. It's going to trump everything. So therefore, we don't have age in this amendment, and we don't also have religion in this amendment, as we've talked about before. So members, I urge you to support this DE5 amendment from Leader Damath that sets the table back to what the original intent was. 1975, Phyllis Kahn, too, also fought hard for Title IX. She fought for this, too. I don't think she would want what's happening to be happening today. I think she would say, let's continue with the federal ERA and not mess with this. Members, we cannot erase the things that women fought for only 50 years ago. That is hardly a shelf life. 50 years. For competitive women's sports team equal to what we have for men. It changes everything, and it will change everything in the state of Minnesota. Members, I urge you to support the DE5 amendment. Thank you.
The member from Anoka, Representative Engen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the Damath DE5. I was waiting to talk on this bill because recently it's definitely been on my mind, knowing that this was coming. After 45 days ago on April 2nd, I left St. Paul, I left this floor. We had caucus afterwards, and I got home around 7:30 at night. And I knew from earlier in the day that my wife wasn't feeling super hot. She was 28 weeks pregnant exactly. And she'd called me that morning after her OBGYN appointment and said, hey, not feeling good, I'm at home. And I said, you know, call my mom, call your mom, my mother-in-law, and make sure that they know what's up just in case something bad happens. And I wanted to cross my T's, dot my I's, make sure that she was doing okay. And she wasn't. She'd called back to the OB twice after that occurred, and they had prescribed her something from the pharmacy. She ran to Walgreens twice. Got back at 7:30, and I like I said, I'd just gotten there. I was home for 10 minutes. What I didn't know is that she was in labor. The entire day she was in labor. And I was frantic. I didn't know what to do. My mom didn't know what to do. My mother-in-law didn't know what to do. And I said, we need to rush her to the hospital. I walked into the bathroom where she was in pain. She had just stood up after laying down on the floor. And I bent over. I was on one knee to pick up my wife's pajama pants to put those on her so we could rush her to the hospital. And as I got on my knee, my premature son flew into my hands. Complete coincidence. I did not expect to deliver my firstborn son. And when I looked at him, I didn't know if he was stillborn or not. That was the same spot on that same bathroom floor that a couple months prior, we had found out we had a miscarriage. And I thought I was reliving a nightmare. Sorry if I get shaken up. Still pretty fresh. But after Everett flew into my hands, I don't know how long it was. Could have been 3 seconds, could have been 3 years. I named him. We still had a long list of names. But we named him there, not knowing if he was going to make it or not. But he started crying, and it gave me hope. And that's when the fight started, the fight for life, the fight for his life, the fight for his equal rights. And he proved that he was worthy of that fight. 10 minutes after he was born, the first responders arrived. And they acted so quickly. They saved his life. They were visibly shaken. One of the funny moments, if you can say that there was any, from that evening was my wife had her head up against the back of the bathtub, and she was going in and out of consciousness, but she finally, she was with us and there. And she started laughing. And I said, "Sweetheart, why are you laughing?" Thinking maybe she was going into a state of delirium or having some mental trauma that she was starting to show. And she goes, "No, you should see the faces of these guys as they poke their head into the bathroom and see this. They don't know how to respond." She finds the silver lining in everything, but I was in a total state of shock. But the first responders, they rushed him out, put him in the back of an ambulance, which I frantically tried to chase down in the car with my mother-in-law. And I didn't know if we would show up to the hospital and he was going to be alive. I got to Children's St. Paul after a car ride full of prayers and begging that he'd still be there when I got there. And I caught up with him in the elevator as it was closing. And he was hooked up to a lot of machines. And I just asked, "Is he there?" And they said, "Yep, he's here." Meanwhile, my wife is in the back of another ambulance. And she was so calm. Her name's Faith, and she lived up to the name. They said, "How are you doing? Are you okay?" They didn't know why she was so calm. And she said, "Nope, this one's in God's hands. I have to trust in him right now." And God might mean a lot of different things to a lot of people in this chamber. Mine means Christ, but I know that there are differences of opinion on that. But I had a hard time accepting that same belief, that it was in somebody else's hands, that I was powerless in all of this. What I didn't know is that those same first responders who asked my wife if she was okay, they had just gotten word that my son had flatlined in the back of that ambulance. And he wasn't with us for 2 minutes. They brought him back. They put an oxygen mask that would fit you or I over Everett's head, just to try to get something into him because he had no oxygen. Well, a miracle happened. He was running cold. His body temperature was cold, and that allowed his organs to go into a state of dormancy so that he didn't need to use as much oxygen. He fought. He wanted to stick around. And at the end of all of this, when it's still night one and we were being told, enjoy the time that you have with him because we don't know what this looks like. We knew that he had brain bleeds. We knew that he had a heart murmur, a PAD, a hole in his heart. We didn't know if his organs were going to shut down because of the fact that he didn't have oxygen for quite a long time. And we didn't know if he was going to be able to re-regulate his body temperature. All those things we didn't know. And this is at 28 weeks, mind you. Today, he's 45 days old. We've been in the NICU for quite some time. We're adjusting to life in an 8x8 box, and we are so thankful for the nurses. Megan is our favorite. She bakes us bread every night. She's an absolute sweetheart and has kept him alive on more times than one when he forgets to breathe. She's always there making sure that she jumps into action and helps him out. And we've gone through the most hellish of times and the greatest of times in these past 45 days. And why I'm supporting the DE5, to tie this all around, is because it recenters us on this Equal Rights Amendment about equal rights. We get back to the basics, equal rights. We don't expand it to include other things that people don't understand, including pregnancy. That's in the language that you guys construed here. People don't know what that means. We're going to leave it up to a judge to determine it. I'm not okay with that. Under the guise of equal rights, you're trying to enshrine into our state constitution that my son has none. Today, he's alive. He's 34 weeks old, gestational age. Under this bill, as it currently sits, he may not have any rights. The only thing that changed was his address, in the womb or out of the womb. We need to get back to balance in this. We need to get back to equal rights and not interject other policies that should be debated on their own merits. I think it's extremely disingenuous to do otherwise. And Minnesotans agree with that as well. 64% of them in a recent poll that came out last week said that unlimited abortion access up to the moment of birth and beyond should be separate from the question of the Equal Rights Amendment. I'm asking that we depoliticize this issue. I'm asking that we get back to something where red or blue or in between, we can go and check the box, yes, if this shows up on a ballot in 2026. The DE5 does that. Without that amendment, it does not. It's tough when we're put into situations to have to go against our own experiences and our own values, our own beliefs, our own convictions, when it could be something that we actually agree to. And we've done it a lot, guys, on every issue. We have something that can bring us together, and we need to throw in a poison pill. I don't want this issue to be that one. I appreciate members of the body on my side and on your side that come up and ask me how he's doing. That means a lot, because it's tough to be here physically and not still be there mentally. But when we do stuff like this, it starts to delegitimize those well wishes. It does. I'm asking that you support the DE5 and that we can get the Equal Rights Amendment back to what it should be about, which is equal rights. Thank you.
The member from Morrison, Representative Schultz.
Madam Speaker and members, I really appreciate that Representative Dameth has brought forward an amendment to recenter us upon the things that Minnesotans do support. As has been mentioned, 64% of Minnesotans think that this is outrageous, that these two things, that abortion policy, the most extreme in the land, should be tied to whether or not men and women are equal. 64%, members, 64% of Minnesotans think these issues should be dealt with separately. When we look at this and recenter us on history, it's no wonder to me, after over 50 years and longer worth of advocacy, specifically around the DE5 amendment, that this bill would have, that this amendment would have such tremendous support, both in our state and nationwide. But we all know that issues related to equality didn't start today, and they didn't start in 1973, and in Minnesota, it started a lot earlier. And we've talked a lot tonight about Minnesota's state constitution. And for the record again, as we restart this debate on the Equal Rights Amendment, let's remember that in this body, it is the Republicans who believe in equal rights for all. And it's this underlying bill that drives division in our state and is super, super divisive for a whole host of reasons, but because it enshrines discrimination tactics into our Constitution. That's the impact of the underlying bill, which is why we should get back to something like the DE5 amendment. And to provide just a little bit of background to this, members tonight have spoken a lot about their own personally held religious beliefs, and I appreciate that. Earlier tonight, a Democrat on this floor said that it was Christians and conservatives who opposed the Equal Rights Amendment. Well, let me tell you the story of a Christian woman from St. Paul, Minnesota, who has an entire park named after her. One of our earliest Minnesotans, Harriet Bishop. Harriet Bishop, a Christian school teacher, moved here in the mid-1800s, and she was Minnesota's first public school teacher, and she was a Baptist. She helped to found the first Sunday school class in St. Paul, and she fought and she started the temperance movement here in Minnesota, the women's suffrage movement in Minnesota, when she came to Minnesota before Minnesota was even a state. She was a Christian. She was fighting for women. She was Minnesota's first, St. Paul's first public school teacher. And at that time, before Minnesota was a state, she led the way for women's suffrage so that women would be given the right to vote. She taught the settlers. She literally taught in several different languages, including to the Dakota community in St. Paul. And she fought as a Christian for women to have the right to vote. She was a leader. She was a leader that Minnesota remembers. She fought for women. And when I think about this underlying bill, I think it erodes the rights of women. I think it erodes the equal rights of women. And it takes us to a place where women and girls will not have safety in the places that they need it most. President Trump traveled to Minnesota tonight, and he made mention of this attempt to erode women's rights in our nation. He made mention that attempts just like this underlying bill, he made mention that the results of this underlying bill would mean that it would take 400 years for women to retain or to win again the swimming records and the different sporting events where the rights of women are going to be eroded. We should get back to the basics of the things that Minnesotans support. And what they've said emphatically is that they do not support this attempt to combine radical abortion policy with the Equal Rights Amendment or other ideologies that take away from the definition of a woman. We should be so clear tonight that we should focus upon the things that Minnesotans agree with, that Minnesotans would want to see done, the things that generations of Minnesotans, from Harriet Bishop to today, have fought for, the rights of women. And that's what this DE5 amendment is all about. Vote green on this amendment.
The member from Meeker, Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Leader Damath, for bringing the DE5 to us tonight. I got some fun stories here. Tuesday morning, I got to go on Grand to a fun little clothing shop. So I've talked about nails and clothes, different things that we get to do down here and back home. But as I walked in, Mary knows what I do for a job. And she was extra excited to tell me she's so excited to see the ERA finally pass here in Minnesota. And I asked Mary, I said, so tell me what it means to you. What do you love about it? What makes you happy about this happening here in Minnesota? And she goes, finally, women's rights will be protected. And she was talking about just people's bodily choices, that they'd finally be able to just have confidence that that happened. And so she graduated, she told me in 1968, and she goes, we've been fighting so hard for equal rights. And she goes, back in the day, the only thing that I could have done in high school was be a cheerleader. And she goes, that is not what I wanted to do. But I had friends that were cheerleaders. And I said, and she just kept talking about things, just back then, like stereotypical things of just mom's home, this is happening, and how they just were so excited to break out and have equal rights for women and be able to have more opportunities. So when we did talk about some of the things that are going to be happening here tonight, she was flabbergasted by the expansiveness of what's coming here. And she goes, actually, does that mean what I think it means? It means then that everything that we fought for to get women equal rights, now men are going to be a part of it. Boys are going to be a part of these things. And so we were calm and having discussions. She did not know she wanted to talk about abortion with me, and I was perfectly fine with that. And later she did bring up a few things about that, because she did not understand that it was up till birth, that you could make that choice. So with tears in her eyes, I said, how would you feel if in your granddaughter's locker room or bathroom, there may be a biological male in there? Or they might be a part of her volleyball team, or might be a part of this or that. And she just said, we talked about 1 in 3 girls have had situations of abuse or inappropriate things that they've seen or been exploited, and 1 in 4 boys have. And she just said, I can't imagine if you're dealing with something from home or another situation to be in a space that is supposed to be so private and have those uncomfortable, hard things happen. And I did. I explained to her a couple years ago, my son graduated, and in fact, they had a very uncomfortable situation in their locker room. And these are the things that I would love to be a part of, to have conversations around sports and activities and equality and not erasing people and not discriminating. But she said, Mary, to go back to Mary, she just said, this is going to discriminate because my granddaughter will not be protected. Our sports are not going to be protected. These things are not going to be what we fought so hard for. So she encouraged me to call NPR because that's where she gets her news. And she said, you need to call this gal and you need to talk about this with her. And she goes, I still don't believe in what you believe politically, but she goes, this is something that I can get on board with because this is something that we've battled for generations. My mom and my mom's mom, and just the opportunity. So I stand here and support that equal rights must include everyone, and I support Leader Damas DE5, and I hope you do too.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam. The speaker from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate being referred to as the speaker from Chisago County. But alas, that opportunity has passed us by. Thankfully to many, I'm sure. I just wanted to address some things because we were told earlier that it was really Christian conservatives that killed the ERA and they didn't want the ERA. So I did some research because I knew that wasn't true. and I have some actual factual data for you rather than just throwing out what we want to be true. Let's talk about what's actually true. Let's start with this. Let's start with the 1976 Republican Party platform. And in that platform, it says, women who comprise a numerical majority of the population have been denied a just portion of our nation's rights and opportunities. We reaffirm our pledge to work to eliminate discrimination in all areas for reasons of race, color, national origin, age, creed, or sex, and to enforce vigorously laws guaranteeing women's equal rights. And it goes on, the Republican Party platform reaffirms its support for ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. Our party was the first national party to endorse the ERA in 1940. We continue to believe its ratification is essential to ensure equal rights for all Americans. In our 1972 platform, the Republican Party recognized the great contributions women have made to society as homemakers and mothers, as contributors to the community through volunteer work, and as members of the labor force in careers. The platform stated then and repeats now that the Republican Party fully endorses the principle of equal rights, equal opportunities, and equal responsibilities for women. The Equal Rights Amendment is the embodiment of this principle, and therefore we support its swift ratification. That was the Republican Party platform in 1976. It was first entered into the Republican platform in 1940. So please spare me this idea that it was Christian conservative women who were the ones that were opposed to the Equal Rights Amendment. Here's the reality. Here's what Eleanor Roosevelt had to say about the Equal Rights Amendment. As a social feminist and supporter of legislative protections for women, Roosevelt did not endorse the Equal Rights Amendment. The ERA, a product of Alice Paul, and by the way, this is from the National Park Service website. Pretty reputable. This isn't some right-wing source. I try to make sure that I'm finding good sources. The ERA, a product of Alice Paul and the National Woman's Party, was an amendment that, if ratified, would erase all the laws that discriminated against women. Roosevelt and her allies believed that an amendment that got rid of all the protective legislation for women in the workplace would do more harm than good. The ERA, she argued, was impractical and ignored political and social realities. Well, that was Eleanor Roosevelt. Hardly the bastion of conservatism. Well, that's weird. I was told that it was Christian conservatives that hated it. Well, let's look here. This is from George Mason University. This is actual testimony from the congressional hearings on the Equal Rights Amendment. And this testimony is from Myra K. Wolfgang. And it says, "My name is Myra K. Wolfgang. I reside in the city of Detroit, state of Michigan, and am represented in this body by Senator Philip Hart." So Senate hearings. "I am the Vice President of the Hotel and Restaurant Employees and Bartenders International Union, AFL-CIO, and Secretary-Treasurer of its Detroit Local number 705. I am a member of the Michigan State Minimum Wage Board, and I have served on the Mayor's Committee of Human Relations. I am presently a member of the Michigan Women's Commission, the Governor's Commission on the Status of Women. I am opposed to the enactment of the Equal Rights Amendment to our Constitution. I state my position after long and careful consideration, in spite of the fact that we find sex prejudice parading in the cloth of tradition everywhere." Well, she was AFL-CIO. Hardly the bastion of conservatism. But here's the real truth. It was labor unions. It was Democrats. It was New Dealers. They were the ones who were opposed to the Equal Rights Amendment. They were the ones. They were the reason the Equal Rights Amendment didn't get done when it should have. That's it. It's right here in black and white. They were the ones opposed to the Equal Rights Amendment. So we can try with the revisionist history, but that's the good thing about the Google, I suppose, and the internet, is that it's really hard to get away with mistruths, with misinformation at this point, because it's all there. There's a record of all of it. And in this case, let's be very clear about the history of this Equal Rights Amendment. And the Equal Rights Amendment before you in the DE5 is that very same Equal Rights Amendment that Republicans tried to get passed in the 1970s. And here we are again, Republicans trying to pass an Equal Rights Amendment for women. For women. That's what we are trying to get passed. And interestingly, I thought it was very interesting that early platform included age, which we are not doing in the underlying unequal rights amendment that Democrats are trying to pass off the House floor tonight. Rather than passing the unequal rights amendment for all, let's pass the equal rights amendment for women. Let's get that done tonight. Let's ensure that women have the protections under the law that they deserve. Let's vote for the DE5 tonight and make sure that our daughters, our granddaughters, have the opportunity to play competitive sports under Title IX, and that they have the opportunity to win and progress as they should. Let's pass the DE5 and ensure that we do not roll back decades of work by the women on whose shoulders we stand today. Let's not roll back their decades worth of work to get us where we are by passing the unequal rights amendment. Let's pass the DE5 and have a real equal rights amendment for women.
Closing remarks, Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. As we close out this effort to get back to our grandmother's ERA, or your mother's ERA in my case, we Republicans believe in equal rights for all. The Democrats' ERA does not provide them. In 50 years, we've gone from equal rights for all to equal rights, exclusive rights for some. Please vote green on the amendment.
The clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Will the clerk please call the names of the members voting remotely?
Carroll.
Carroll, no.
Carroll, no. Newton.
Newton, no.
Newton, no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 59 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Niska moves to amend Senate File Number 37, the unofficial engrossment. The amendment is coded A18.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. We've had a lot of conversations in this ERA discussion around religious freedom, and obviously that's a huge concern. It's an important part of our Constitution. It's mentioned right, as some have referenced, it's mentioned right in the preamble of our state Constitution. It's part of the distinctive, one of the most distinctive features of the American experiment, and it's essential to religious or to personal flourishing, the right of each of us to pursue our spiritual ends, to respect our conscience. And there's been a lot of efforts in this discussion to try to fix the real concerns that are raised by this unequal rights amendment, concerns that it will dilute or erode religious freedom, concerns that it will define religious institutions as state actors. We were shot down in an effort to deal with that. I think later we might get an opportunity to actually make clear that the state has an interest in preventing discrimination on the basis of religion, so that we can be clear that the state can combat anti-Christian bigotry or anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. I hope we'll get to that. But the A18 amendment is just meant to address one of the arguments we've heard a lot, which is that Article 1, Section 16 takes care of the issue of religious freedom, and we don't need to deal with it anymore, because the Minnesota Supreme Court has interpreted Article 1, Section 16, at least so far, to be fairly protective of religious freedom. But there is some language in Article 1, Section 16, the liberty of conscience hereby secured shall not be so construed as to excuse acts of licentiousness or justify practices inconsistent with the peace or safety of the state. And so this amendment just makes clear that in this new Article 8 or Article 1, Section 18, that we use that same language, so that the courts don't get confused about whether we're putting these other rights on a different footing than the religious freedom that is set forth in Article 1, Section 16. So the A18 amendment merely makes sure that that language is parallel in both places, so that the courts, when they look at this new amendment and they look at Article 1, Section 16, they will see that they should be interpreted consistently with each other, applying similar standards, and making sure that, as I've heard the intent from so many across the aisle, that religious freedom would not be lowered to a second-class right compared to the rights that are secured by the Equal Rights Amendment. So I'm assuming this will be a friendly amendment, and so I urge member support.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Herr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Niska. The ERA does not create a conflict with Article 1, Section 16. This is constitutionally duplicative. I recommend a no vote.
Further discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Gilman moves to amend Senate File Number 37, the unofficial engrossment. The amendment is coded A13.
The member from Meeker, Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This amendment allows for the preservation of separate sports teams, programs, and events for each sex to help preserve the unique character of women's sports, programs, and events. This language is borrowed from Chapter 363A in the Minnesota Human Rights Act. Under this, allowable exemptions to the law against discrimination in public accommodations. This language was not just pulled out of thin air. It is in statutory form. However, unless these exemptions are included in this bill, this constitutional amendment will simply render statutory protections meaningless and allow biological men to colonize women's sports and other programs or events dedicated to the uniqueness of women. I'm going to give you a few things to keep in mind about this amendment as well. This is a matter of justice for women and girls. The ERA protects discrimination against females, takes away female opportunities, and protects the placement of females in physical danger. Number two, it affects all female athletics, regardless of skill level. I was a bench warmer basketball player. I was scrappy, super competitive. I helped put, I'd say, probably 2 or 3 women on the Hall of Fame in our little high school because I did not quit. I definitely wanted to play as much as they did, but I did not have the skill set whatsoever. But one thing it gave me, being in sports, you know, doing team sports especially for myself, and then I also was in track and field. But what basketball gave me was an opportunity to come alongside other girls, and then also, you know, there was different ages because you could play up or down. But we got to travel as a team, and I got to work on communication with my coach. What could I do to get better? What could I do to have more opportunities to play? My DNA definitely did not have the basketball DNA to dominate out there. But I did develop a lot of confidence, and I just developed a lot of security in myself. So I just want to ask, why would we take away from any girl, especially younger ones, this opportunity for them to find their place and find their community? Hormonal changes do not unilaterally erase physical advantages. Males have larger lung capacity, larger hearts, more bone density, more muscle mass, which also allows for explosiveness. You know, in sports and activities, there's advantages that allow them to jump higher, throw further, run and accelerate faster. And one recent study revealed that in sports where upper body strength dominates, males possess more than 50% and a 50% athletic advantage over females. This athletic gap emerges around the age 12 when males experience a 20-fold boost in testosterone. Girls should not have to suffer discriminatory consequences of forced participation in competition with males or no competition at all. And I've seen this last couple years when I started a group called Let Them Play Minnesota back in 2020 to get kids back to playing sports and activities. when we found that we could lock arms with each other and find solutions, working with the Minnesota State High School League, they're looking to us here for guidance. People will say, well, let the Minnesota State High School League take care of it. Let the NCAA take care of it. They're always looking to us in our statutes for guidance on how to move forward. We need to protect women's sports, girls' sports. So I would encourage a green vote, and I would ask for a roll call, please.
Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. And there is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment to the amendment.
Knutson moves to amend the Gilman Amendment to Senate File Number 37, the unofficial engrossment. The amendment to the amendment is coded A35.
The member from Cass, Representative Knutson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Representative Gilman, for this amendment. I'm hoping we have a great debate on this and can change some hearts and minds. But I think it's really important to make sure that in your amendment, we say sex. What my amendment to your amendment would do would be to define sex as being an individual sex at birth. This is a biological fact. Sex is determined at conception. It's detectable by blood tests at 10 weeks in utero, and it's confirmed upon birth. Sex cannot be changed 100 years after we die. Somebody can exhume our bones, test our DNA, and we will still be the same sex that we were when we were born. This is an undeniable fact. Members, I hope that you can see common sense and unfortunately the need for this amendment to the amendment, and that you would vote green. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I would request a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion on the amendment to the amendment. The member from Ramsey, Representative Finke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I would ask that we vote no on the amendment to the amendment. Trans women are women, trans girls are girls. Please don't dig up my bones when I'm dead. Trans people are trans. We don't need to pretend like we are not who we are. Vote no.
The member from Douglas, Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to stand up and support the amendment to the amendment. Members, transgenderism is a belief system, fully protected as a religion under the First Amendment. The government cannot endorse or condone a belief system like transgenderism. Science, on the other hand, recognizes male and female. Male with the XY chromosome, female with the XX chromosome. Speaking of digging up bones, they have never ever found anybody but male and female. That's science. You can believe, you can choose to believe. People are choosing to believe in science, that there is male and female. That's what's important here. Male and female. So members, I ask you to support the Representative Knutson amendment. Thank you.
The member from Goodhue, Representative Altendorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. Thank you, Representative Knutson, for bringing. Did not go. Hello?
Okay, your paper did it. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, everyone. So thank you, Representative Knutson, for bringing this amendment. This makes a lot of sense. It's common sense. And, you know, members, history is going to look back at this time. And truth is truth. And unfortunately, what I have seen and what I've heard from people in this body and also on social media is that someone who is speaking truth is labeled as someone who hates. Someone who hates someone. And that could not be farther from the truth. Truth is truth. And when we are standing here offering this amendment, it is the epitome of the Equal Rights Amendment that was passed in the 1970s, the original one, to allow biological women to play in sports and to be competitive. That was why Title IX was passed. That is why the Equal Rights Amendment was passed. And right now, we have the Republican Party who is standing up for girls, standing up for women. In fact, I would call the Republicans the new feminists. That we care about girls. That is so funny that you guys think it's funny. So if you have biological girls that play in sports and they are working as hard as they can, they don't have as long of in running, they wouldn't have as long as legs normally physically, they don't have the same lung capacity physically as men. And you're laughing at girls that they would train and they would work as hard as they could. They would train for hours and hours and hours, but never could compete at the same physical level as a biological male. And yet, I don't know if the video or if the audio picked that up, but the majority party was laughing at the concept that I said the Republicans are standing here tonight in protection of women, in protection of girls. Truth is truth. Truth is not hate. In fact, I would say truth is love because we want what's best for both parties. We want what's best for biological girls to be able to be on the same level playing field as other biological girls and to allow them to compete, to allow them to be able to get scholarships, to allow them to be on championship teams. We deeply care for girls and we love them and we are speaking truth. Right now tonight, we are speaking truth. And it is labeled as hate because we are speaking truth. Members, I give so much just, you know, to the members of our body who is fighting against this woke culture that is denying truth, and we are standing up against it. History will not look well upon this. History will not look well upon this. And Representative Knudsen, I give you so much, I commend you for your courage, for your strength, and for standing up for girls and for women. I commend you for your spirit of courage for speaking truth tonight.
The member from Polk, Representative Keel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On this topic, the amendment that was that we're discussing right now, we talk about the differences between male and female. One thing I did not know until this week when I went to go have my PFO checked, my hole in my heart, there were a lot of tests taken, and the doctor and I were going through all of the little details of what was going on, and did the patch work, and yes, it's fine. And then there was this little square, and I said, what is this? Not male. I said, why would that even be on there? And he said, well, your heart determines, we can look at your heart. And I said, you mean to say my heart says whether I'm male or female by the picture and the function? We were watching the function at the time. I didn't ask him detail because, you know, doctors are busy, but I was really surprised by that. I know that we've talked about bone structure and all of those things, but the fact is you can't change your heart. Well, I suppose unless you get if you need to have a heart replacement. But the point is that God made us male and female for a reason. You can make choices to do different things that are different interests, but the reality is that our women and our girls need to be protected in the way of locker rooms and sports and bathrooms and all of those things that somehow this new woke ideology is that we can just let everybody be whatever they want, when in fact you are built that way. And there are people that have disabilities, that have challenges, but I was and I wanted to share it with you. I was really surprised when he said, oh no, we can look at your heart, and certainly my husband's a very big man, and his heart is big. It says, your heart is as big as your fist. And his is big, and the doctors have told me that, you know, when they look at it, he's got a really large heart, and sometimes his personality displays that. He's very kind and a bit of a funny guy, but very generous in his spirit. But the point is back to the amendment. This is an amendment that we should identify with. We should vote green on this. This will help us to give direction to our schools, protect our children, and there are other ways we can do things if children want to be other direction. They want to have privacy or whatever. But for the generalities of school, locker rooms, again, protection of women, we need to make sure that our daughters and our women are protected. And that's just, I'm supporting the amendment to the amendment, so both of them. Thank you.
The member from Wright, Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I really appreciate the debate on this amendment to the amendment because we now know two things for absolute certain. The first is that if this amendment, if the Equal Rights Amendment is ratified, men will be in the private spaces of women. That was stated here tonight. Trans women are women. Trans girls are girls. Well, then I guess they get to be in your daughter's locker room. I guess they get to be in your wife's restroom. And I see nods. Thank you for confirming that. So we now know that that's what's on the line with this amendment, which also means that the rights of women are being rolled back. After decades upon decades of working for your own spaces, your own accomplishments, your own achievements, your own categories, in which to excel, in which to be safe, in which to be private, we're now going backwards, and this isn't the only way, but it's the way we're talking about right now with this amendment to the amendment. So thank you for confessing that. Makes this a whole lot easier. Men are going to be in women's private spaces when this is amended. The other thing we know is what I said earlier this evening when we were discussing another amendment, and that is that the ratification of the so-called ERA is in fact going to break Article 1, Section 16 of the Minnesota State Constitution, which is supposed to protect our freedom of conscience, supposed to protect our freedom of religion. Again, the clause that's relevant, nor shall any control of or interference with the rights of conscience be permitted. You just admitted that the purpose of this amendment to the Constitution is to enshrine into our founding document for the state those ideas, the idea that trans women are women and trans girls are girls. Those are points of conscience, those are beliefs, and they're also, notably, pointed out by this amendment to the amendment, non-factual, nonsensical. Biological sex cannot be protected if we affirm that. Those two ideas are opposite of one another, as demonstrated by your laughter at one of our women when she correctly pointed out that we're the feminists in the house tonight. Because we're the ones who are standing up for biological women, for their privacy, for their accomplishments, for their achievements, for their future, for their hopes and dreams. Our daughters, our granddaughters, what hope do they possibly have to achieve as their mothers did and their grandmothers did? If we're going to put biological males in their spaces, as you just confessed to. If you're going to put an idea into the Constitution that has no physical, scientific, biological backing whatsoever, and then use that as a basis for disparate impact discrimination legal claims against the state, which we're not defining, if you're going to do that, then you might as well just toss out. I should have brought an amendment tonight to just cross out Article 1, Section 16 of the Constitution, because in effect, that is what you are doing. You are saying that my right to conscience does not matter at all. You are saying that Representative Altendorf's right to conscience does not matter at all. You are saying that Representative Knudsen's right to conscience matters so little that she has to share a locker room, share a restroom with a biological man. That's what you're saying here tonight. It's belittling, it's insulting, and it's erasing the gains that have been made on behalf of women for decades. Thank you for confessing to it.
The member from Washington, Representative Hemmingson-Yager.
So I would like to speak on the theories, claims of biology and genetics and sex and chromosomes. I am a biologist. I have my master's in genetics. I've taught anatomy and physiology, and I've taught introduction to biology. There is more to being a boy or a girl than a man or a woman than the shape of your chromosomes. Chromosomes shape is just your DNA wound up and coiled until they look like X's or Y's on a karyotype. I've analyzed karyotypes. I've analyzed DNA to see whether the X chromosomes have genetic data that is present or not present. And I want to say that, there was a time where, yes, we did think the SRY gene on the Y chromosome was called the testes determining factor. That was what determined whether you would be male or female. That's not the case anymore, because as scientists, we learn and we continue to learn and we adapt and we learn more and we figure out all of these puzzle pieces. And there's so much more going on than that. You may have heard that there are other things besides X and Y. There's an X and an O karyotype form, also known as Turner syndrome. You can be XXY, also known as Klinefelters. You can be XYY, you can be XXYY. It all depends on how the chromosomes replicate and separate from each other. It has nothing really to do with whether you're a boy or a girl or a man or a woman. And I also want to say that now as we get into genetics even more, there are epigenetic factors that happen. There are factors outside of the DNA that can work on the genes in the DNA strand. All of this is happening inside your body. You don't even know what's going on. But I really would like to educate everybody and tell you there's more going on in genetics and there's more going on with sex identification than just a simple X or a simple Y chromosome.
Member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. And thank you, Representative Gilman, for the amendment, and Representative Knudsen for the amendment to the amendment. And I was a little bit distracted by some of Hemmingson Yeager's speech, and I'm bummed because I would have liked to have heard the whole thing. But I caught the beginning about chromosomes not totally determining male and female. And according to the NIH, there are other things involved in male bodies. Things like increased muscle mass and strength, stronger bones, different skeletal structure, better adapted cardiorespiratory systems, and early developmental effects on brain networks that wires males to be inherently more competitive and aggressive. Interestingly, I think this part is interesting. Testosterone secreted before birth, before they're even born, and then postnatally, and then after puberty, is the major factor that drives these physiological sex differences. This is directly from the NIH, and really it's regarding elite sports and why, well, it just says most elite sports are divided into male and female divisions because of the greater athletic performance displayed by males. And here's the key sentence in this study from the NIH, from the National Institutes of Health. Without sex division, females would have little chance of winning because males are faster, stronger, and have greater endurance capacity. Now, this is from the National Institutes of Health. But frankly, if you needed the National Institute of Health to tell you that, come on. Like, you're just not living in reality if that's the case. It's just clear. And members, I would suggest that Representative Knudsen and Representative Gilman are giving you a real opportunity here. Because my only consolation today and this evening, as we are debating this bill, is that we're likely going to be able to win when this is on the ballot. And by win, people are going to vote no. The people of Minnesota are going to vote no on this constitutional amendment. And it's because you've overstepped. It's because you've overstepped. KSTP poll just this week, last week, 51% of Minnesotans don't think abortion should be in the Constitution at all. 64% of Minnesotans do not think that the ERA and abortion should be in the same Constitution, in the same constitutional amendment. And I'm going to tell you a little story about this specifically. I was having dinner, my daughter had a play a couple of weeks ago, so I was having dinner and chatting with a few family members, all of them Democrats. One gay, liberal Democrat. And he said to me, "Are you guys really putting abortion in your Constitution?" And I said, "Well, yes. And we're also doing these other things as part of the Equal Rights Amendment. Part of it is protections for gender identity that will supersede the protections currently enjoyed by women." And he cut me off and he said, "Men do not belong in women's sports." And I actually would say it a little bit differently. I say male bodies don't belong in women's sports because I'm fine acknowledging transgender women, transgender girls, but that doesn't change the fact that male bodies do not belong in women's sports. And while, yes, that is my opinion, it's also the opinion of most Minnesotans. And it was certainly the opinion of these Democrat family members Without any prompting from me, I didn't say a thing. That was what they had to offer up. So my only consolation in this work that we're doing tonight on this unequal rights amendment is that it will likely be defeated at the ballot box. Because again, it doesn't take the National Institutes of Health to inform you that male bodies are different than female bodies. You can see it with your own eyes. You can see it with your own eyes. And it happens to be factually true according to every scientific article ever produced on the topic. Male bodies are different than female bodies. So again, thank you for the amendment, Representative Knudsen. Thank you for the amendment, Representative Gilman. Thank you for giving us the chance to acknowledge that there is a difference in biological sex. And we can acknowledge that while still acknowledging transgender people. But we don't have to put biological women in a lesser category to accommodate transgender women. That's where this unequal rights amendment misses the mark. It is the subjugation of women amendment. It is elevating transgender women above biological women. And it's wrong. That's why we're having all of these conversations and all of these fights today. I'm not going to tiptoe around this issue. That's the problem with this unequal rights amendment. It's elevating transgender women above biological women. It is placing transgender women in biological women's spaces. It is placing transgender women in biological women's sports. It is taking away all the advancements we have made with Title IX, with women's athletics. We finally have the brackets for women's basketball in college. We're taking it away. We are taking away that equalizer that we recognized was necessary for biological women to have a chance in competitive athletics. This was universally accepted. Everyone understood that male bodies had an advantage in athletics. Everyone understood it. And now again, we're being told to don't believe your lying eyes. I'm going to believe it, and I'm going to believe the National Institutes of Health that there is a difference between biological bodies. And I'm certainly going to support the Knudsen amendment to the amendment, defining based on the individual's biological sex assigned at birth. And I'm also going to support the Gilman amendment. And frankly, if you actually want a shot at this unequal rights amendment becoming part of our state constitution, you should all probably support it.
Member from Lyon, Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. I want to thank Representative Knudsen and Representative Gilman for their fine amendments as they're put together. It's my hope that they are put on this bill as we're debating it here tonight. You know, I was reminded of why we're all here. And from a different thought process is, you know, often, you know, how many of you are potentially married or have a significant other on the floor here? Raise your hand. You know, that primarily is the foundation of the first team, right? Right? As we're outdoor knocking, as we're lit dropping, as we're putting signs up, whatever that be, part of our campaign, you have the buy-in of your spouse. that is the foundation of every successful campaign that brings us here to the House of Representatives and to the Senate. And part of that is give and take, right? When I met my wife, Jessica, she was fresh out of college. We met at church. She was a national champion basketball player in college. She can kick my rear end. And part of being part of a team is a part of understanding, right? Understanding that sometimes one is better at one thing and another is better at another thing. While she may be able to kick my hind end at a game of horse or pig or a pickup basketball, she's a great teammate. And, you know, as this legislative body is moving forward, are we being good teammates to the public? And most importantly, are we being good teammates to the women of our lives? Now, do you for 1 second believe that it is fair to have male bodies in women's sports? It will change the dynamic of national sports, state sports, local sports, pickup sports. I have 3 daughters. 2 of them love basketball. 1 loves volleyball and softball, and they're good at it. They love the sport. And we, as a body, have a duty to protect their bodies. For my birthday, my birthday was just earlier this month, and my daughters gave me a coffee cup. And it said, "I'm sorry if you're offended with my common sense." And I forgot to bring it on the House floor tonight for tonight's debate. But Representative Knudsen and Representative Gilman's amendment is common sense. Don't be offended by it, because it's common. I'm reminded of, anybody have heard of Daily Wire? Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Jason Boring really have revolutionized the art of transferring information to the public. It certainly has a conservative bet, but they also have a movie production company. And they produced a movie called Lady Ballers. Whether you're on the right or the left side of this aisle, I would recommend that you take the time and watch it. I'm serious. And I think that's one of the unique things. They take a unique perspective on women's sports, and they poke fun at the issues that this society is facing today. While these amendments are exceptionally serious, a movie like Lady Ballers is looking to really analyze what is going on in the public space. Should we or shouldn't we allow male bodies, as Representative Ann New Brindley said, into women's sports? Should this body protect the bodies of women, of girls, both in the bathroom, in their homes, on the court, and ultimately in the court of public opinion when it comes to this amendment, as it's more than likely to go before the voters at some November in the future? Members, we have a duty to hold certain things dear. There were conversations tonight about Title IX and its importance in the public good, to make sure that women can produce and just gain the uniqueness of victory, the challenge of being challenged, overcoming those. My wife was telling me last night about one of the challenges that she held dear when she was in high school basketball. And she said, "Chris, one of my greatest achievements was overcoming some of the issues that she had, not necessarily sports related, but the stuff off and on the court that were more emotional and psychological." And she was given an award in that. She said that was one of the biggest and greatest awards that she'd ever had, because it takes work It takes effort. It takes dedication to become a national champion. And yet, an amendment like this is giggled at when we're trying to make a point. Like, that's funny. Those people don't understand. You know, we all understand a fair fight. We all understand reality. I'd like to think we all understand what common sense is. But I've seen, even on this House floor, which would have been reported in the news as a fair fight or a fair confrontation. But I can promise you on the floor, if you saw it, it was not. Members, take the Knutson Amendment, take the Gilman Amendment. Let's stand strong for women, for biological girls. Thank you.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Many years ago, I had the opportunity to meet and speak with, on several occasions, one of the geneticists that was on the Human Genome Project. And that's why I started pushing pharmacogenomics. But we also talked about the East German swim team that dominated, and the discovery with the XXY, by having the male chromosome, there were biological advantages. And the Olympics looked at that and decided that was not fair. Yes, there are more than the most prominent XX and XY, but the presence of the male chromosome, whether you've got multiple, makes it more advantageous in sports. And that was proven in the Olympics. And the whole discussion here is the fact that if you have that male chromosome, you have a biologic advantage. And I have seen that in high school sports, because we would, I was on cross country, and both teams ran together and practiced together. I saw that in track, where a mediocre shot putter on the boys' team would dominate on the women's team. And what I really enjoyed what happened with the Iowa basketball player and the excitement that brought for women's sports. But if we don't have this amendment or the protections, and this underlying bill passes, there will be a track team, a basketball team, a soccer team. And we all know the opportunities will be lost for the girls and women that love sports. And I don't want to take that away from them. I don't know why we would want to ignore reality and take that away. I've enjoyed what Title IX did and is doing. please vote green on this amendment to the amendment.
The member from Crow Wing, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And you know, I'm just an uneducated pastor from Merrifield, Minnesota. I know that. I'm no expert, Representative Hemmingson Yeager. I got that lecturing back last year in committee, I remember. The XX versus the XY chromosome. So I won't argue that. But it's pretty simple to me and to many Minnesotans. You're born male or female. That is truth. That is reality. When you are born, you come naked out of your mother's womb, and you are born biologically male or biologically female. You have male boy parts or you have female girl parts. That is a fact. And we've already mentioned, if you want to try and change that, that is your business. But I will go to an expert on this House floor who is an expert, and you can laugh and mock at that. I don't know, maybe you won't, but I've seen it already on this House floor. There is an expert who called this out very plainly, and I am going to trust him more than anybody. I'm going to trust what he says. I'm going to trust his science because he absolutely knows what he is talking about. And his disciple gave us a history book to document what he said about this subject. It's found in Matthew chapter 19, verse 4. Jesus Christ said this, "Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and he made them female?" Jesus Christ quoted Genesis, and he didn't make any apology for it. He boldly declared it because he knows what he's talking about. He also warned that you're going to have to give an account of every idle thing you say. And I'm here to tell you, he's a God of mercy. I said this the other day, and I heard laughing, mocking when I said it. God is love. And the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And I believe that with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength. I used to not believe that. See, I used to be an atheist. I used to hate Christians. I used to mock Christianity. I used to mock Jesus' words. I hated his words. But one day I was confronted in the depths of my soul with his words. And I started listening. Jesus Christ is the one who said, "In the beginning, God made them male and female." You'll have to give an account to him. And I hope you'll listen. Thank you, members. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Closing remarks, Representative Knudsen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. Thank you for this great discussion. Rep. Swinsky, I think I have to disagree with you. You had said that everybody here believes in reality, but I don't think we do. There are two sexes. There are men and there are women. There are boys and there are girls. Some of our little boys like to play with dolls, and some of our little girls like to play with trucks, and that's okay. That doesn't make a little girl a boy, and that doesn't make a little boy a girl. That's okay. There are varying degrees of femininity and masculinity, and that's okay. Most of the time, when puberty hits, children grow out of that. But something that is absolutely undeniable is our sex. You have an XX or an XY. You are born male or you are born female. If we can start making things up, if we can start pretending reality isn't reality, where does this stop? Where does this end? Nothing is truth. I am so thankful that we got to finally hear that, yes, that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to let trans women be in protected spaces for women. We are trying to let trans girls be in protected spaces for our daughters. Thank you for sharing that. Because I was always going to fight against this, but now I will fight against this with everything I have. I will do everything I can to protect my daughters, to protect your daughters, and to protect every single little girl in Minnesota. Members, vote green.
The clerk will take the roll. Will the clerk please call the names of the members participating remotely?
Carol.
Carol, no.
Carol, no. Newton.
Newton, no.
Newton, no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 ayes and 68 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment to the amendment is not adopted. Back to the underlying amendment, Representative Finke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hello, everyone. That was a lot. I'm going to ask you to vote no on the amendment. I'm just going to say a few things about the conversation that we're having. I think it's important for us to just have a few level sets because I don't know what's going on. So I just want to say that it has been over 50 years since the first professional sporting event in the United States in which trans people participated and competed against cis people. American sports survived, right? We still have professional sports. The reason that states are trying to ban people from using the bathroom is because we have always used the bathroom. And nothing has ever happened. I share a restroom with you. I go in there, sometimes you're in there. That has happened forever. Forever. We've been hearing an awful lot of Bible tonight. So I also just want to say, I do not deny or have any problem whatsoever with the religious beliefs that have been expressed here. But I do love, some of my favorite Bible verses are these Leviticus Bible verses about gender and gender identity and what you should not do. And I don't think those are my favorite Bible verses because they tell me that I am wrong. But they tell me that 4,000 years ago, this debate was happening. There were queer people. And there were people who said, you should not dress the way you dress. But we did anyways. And then it's 4,000 years later, we're having the same conversation. The same verses are being quoted. The same queer people are here saying, we're just trying to live our lives. You believe what you want to believe. It makes no difference. It makes no difference to me. This bill has nothing to do with your religious beliefs. We are talking about the law. We are talking about trans people very explicitly now. Very explicitly, you have made the ERA a bill about trans people. I was so grateful to have inclusion in the broader ERA for our community. It's just one piece of this bill, and it says trans people should be treated equally before the law. And we know now, you keep saying that we have made bare. I have always stood here and said trans women are women. I am a woman. I am not a good athlete. I have never played sports well. But, we heard Representative Keel talk about, there must not be trans boys playing in the sports because nobody seems to care about that. And it's evidence that this is something y'all just don't know. Minnesota has been leading in trans participation in sports for more than a decade. In the last 10 years, we have had more trans people playing sports than any state. We have also seen the highest rise in cisgender girls' participation in youth sports of any state. Inclusion is not a threat. Inclusion is not a danger. I don't know why we have to pretend like the world falls apart if trans people live and participate in the world, but it simply doesn't. Instead, when you exclude us, you put us at risk. You put our lives at risk. Literally murder, literally assault. You would have me in the men's room. You would put me into positions of such great danger because of an illusion, a threat that is not real. The threat that you perceive is not real. The data has made this clear. Trans girls and trans boys and non-binary people and two-spirit and intersex people have been living through all time, intermingled. You just didn't know that we were there. That's what's happening. 5 years ago, North Carolina decided that they didn't want to have trans people using the bathroom. That was it. We had been using the bathroom for all time. We had been playing sports for all time. I'm excited to see your advocacy for completely jacked trans men with mustaches and beards who are crushing sports return to playing for the girls' teams. I have never heard anyone advocate for that. I've never heard anyone say that our non-binary people should be able to play on the teams of their choice because you don't care about the issue. There is a political value to what is being done. You should believe whatever you want to believe about me and my community. I couldn't care less. Before I got into this body, after I was elected, I gave an interview and I said, I do not defend my own existence. I'm not doing that here now. Trans women are women. But if you want to pretend like the sudden appearance of trans people in your world is the new threat that's going to literally destroy, look at what you're saying, literally destroy reality, look at how much power you're giving us. We don't want that power. We don't want to be the threat you presume. We just want to live our lives. Kids play sports because they like social inclusion. Why do you want to take that away from trans kids? Kids play sports because they learn how to belong to their community. They learn about teamwork. So you don't want trans kids to have that? What do you want trans girls to do? Because there are trans girls. What do you want them to do? You want to put them into positions of extreme danger? Is that what we want? No, that is not what the people of Minnesota want. It is not what the people of the United States want. The things that have been said on this floor, aside from being incredibly, incredibly cruel, they are dangerous. They're dangerous to our communities. They are dangerous to non-binary people who are completely erased from this conversation. They are dangerous to trans boys who are completely ignored in every conversation about trans people. And they are dangerous to trans women, especially trans women of color. So you want to talk about trans people's inclusion in sports? I'm totally here to do that. I can show you the list of 500 professional athletes, professional women athletes who are advocating for elite sport inclusion of trans women. Cheryl Reeve, our Great Links coach, was just talking about this. It is not a simple little thing about reality versus non-reality. Trans people have always been here. Read your Bibles. We're not new. We're not going anywhere. We've always existed. We always will exist. Just stop pretending like we are the great risk, the great threat to the world. We're not. We're just people trying to live our lives in peace. Vote no on this, and let's move on with our lives.
The member from Washington, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start out, and I'm going to date myself here, but I remember in elementary school we used to play kickball in the gym. And kickball, when it was the boys and the girls, we all played together. Kickball is a game where you had two sides, and we would pick teams, and we'd have captains, and first they'd pick you always pick the boys first, and then they picked then it was all the boys, and then they'd take turns, and then eventually they picked the girls, the strongest of the girls, and then the weakest of the girls. But, it was tough as a girl, and I was one of the stronger girls, frankly, and it was tough as a girl to compete with the boys. But we did. In elementary school, we had to compete with the boys. And I remember the feeling there of, that I was one of the weaker people on the team, physically weaker, even though I was one of the stronger girls at the time. And that isn't a good thing for a girl to feel that way. And it's much better, I can tell you, when you got a little older and you were actually playing with just girls, right? That's much better. This is about protecting our daughters. This is about protecting women. We have come a long way in the last 50, 60 years as a sex. We've come a long way. We've gotten, I've always felt equal, and maybe I was just lucky. I had parents who always treated, my mother was always equal. In fact, she's a tough woman. But I always felt that I was equal to all men, at least in what I could accomplish. But one thing I certainly wasn't equal to is in my physical stature, my strength. Going back to the kickball analogy, I've always told my husband, men are there to put things on the top shelf and carry things, right? Lift things, so thank you. But it's true. It's absolutely true. And I feel like we're going completely backwards, where it's oppressive. This is something that's oppressive to women. When biological men re-invade our spaces, our safe spaces, they invade our sports. That is oppressive to women and to girls. And it's wrong. And we are, learning throughout this debate that this ERA amendment has nothing to do with women. It has nothing to do with women's rights or anything. This actually has to do with issues of and other things, trans issues, frankly, in many cases. And I feel like that's just an awful, awful thing for women. Because this is taking away our rights as women. It's taking away our safe spaces. It's taking away our ability to compete in athletics. And it's wrong. It's oppressive. It's oppressive to women. It's oppressive to girls. And so any kind of support, or if you don't support this amendment, I think it's just bringing back that dominance of the male gender. So I ask us to support this amendment. Let's make it clear that that this is not about men taking over our spaces, men taking over through their physical stature, dominating our sports, because that is what the effect of this constitutional amendment would be. I also want to say one more thing. Representative Brindley, New Brindley, said that she very much believes that this will fail, the ballot box. I completely agree with her. I was around when the gay marriage amendment was put out by the Republican majorities back in 2012. And I wasn't in office at the time, but I actually wrote an editorial. It's in the St. Paul paper, and I was a Republican National Committee woman at the time, and in favor of gay marriage before that debate. And so that's where I come from on this. That was over a decade ago. But they overstepped. Republicans overstepped, and they lost the majorities because of that. This ERA amendment, the way it's drafted, is a huge overstep. It's huge, and it will fail at the ballot box, and I'll be happy to help make that happen. Thank you.
The member from Freeborn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In 1975, I was entering my senior year in high school, Mound Westonka High School, to be exact. And I remember a few weeks before school started, just this rumbling going amongst all the girls in the high school, all of us seniors especially, because we were starting for the very first time a girls' basketball team. Never had one before that. And boy, were we girls, that doesn't even make sense, wow, were we girls excited. We had our own basketball team, and I joined that team, and I loved it. I had a blast. I also about destroyed my knee with an injury, and that's why I go limping around here sometimes. But it was so fun to have our own team. And when I look at the girls nowadays playing sports, basketball in particular, because I love that sport, I'm like, wow, are they good? I was so bad, and so were all of us when we started out. We hadn't really played before. Compare us to the boys, we would have been crushed. But we had our own team because our female bodies are structurally different than male bodies. And that's why we all know that we have separate sports for men and women and for boys and girls. When kids are really little, it doesn't matter as much, but you hit that certain age point, and it really does matter. And my concern is for all the girls and women who fought so hard for their equal rights. And I will always stand up for women and girls' equal rights. They fought so hard for that, so that female bodies could compete against female bodies and male bodies can compete against male bodies. And men and boys have rights too. So I do not want to see that lost, because I remember when that started, and I didn't have those opportunities before that. So we need to continue to separate those physical bodies so that girls and women can continue in their sports, can win awards, can win championships, can win scholarships, because girls deserve that just as much as boys deserve that. And I understand the feelings involved in this. I get that. It's a tough situation. I don't know how you fix this, except I know that the reality is men's bodies, women's bodies, girls, boys are structurally different. And when it comes to sports, when it comes to changing rooms and locker rooms, those differences are very evident. And we need to have equality for women and girls in sports. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support of the Gimlin Amendment, and I honestly don't think it goes far enough. It says that nothing in this section shall be construed to prevent the restriction of membership on athletic teams or athletic programs. And I think that's a really good start, but I don't think we should be limiting it that we need to protect women-only teams for sports. We need to protect girl-only teams for sports or boys-only. We also need to protect locker rooms, bathrooms, domestic violence shelters, prisons. There are reasons, members, why there is discrimination that's permitted based on sex. And it's not to harm women, it's to protect women. No less an advocate than Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that any statute that denies women simply because they are women full citizenship stature, such as equal opportunity to aspire, achieve, participate in, and contribute to society, violates the Equal Protection Clause. Title IX allows discrimination based on sex in public education, for sports, bathrooms, locker rooms, sex education, and other provisions, because the law currently recognizes that some segregation is necessary, a necessary component of female participation in education and athletics, in line with Justice Ginsburg's thinking. It's a pathway, as someone said. This is interesting. This is not where I found this article was not in a conservative journal. It's, what's it called? Women's Liberation Front. So they're advocating for continued opportunities for women that requires some segregation or discrimination based on sex. We just had an interesting discussion about the definition of sex. And way early on, when we started this debate early in the morning, the author had said, you know, there's a lot of these definitions, we can just look them up. And so earlier in the day, I did look up what's the definition of sex. I found many definitions, but they're defined. The Webster definition is either of the two major forms of individuals that occur in many species and that are distinguished respectively as female or male, especially on the basis of their reproductive organs and structures. Members, there is legitimate reasons to discriminate based on sex and have separate facilities based on sex. And not only was it Ruth Bader Ginsburg, former Senator Hillary Clinton authored a provision in the No Child Left Behind Act to ensure that public schools would still be allowed to have single-sex education facilities as long as they were voluntary and of equal quality, because she recognized that some girls do better in a single-sex setting.
And she supported that. This is not just a conservative idea. There's a lot of people who understand that there are real differences between men and women, and that for women to flourish, they need to have those spaces protected. So I want to end my remarks on a little story about my family. I'm the very proud mom. If you know me, you know I talk about my daughters. I have 3 beautiful, now young adult daughters. All of them played soccer. All of them were athletic. I am not, so it's a whole new world to me. But 2 of my daughters played soccer, and all 3 played soccer. 2 of the 3 got concussions. One got a concussion in a game, and it was pretty significant, and she was out for a few months. The other daughter got a concussion playing soccer in a pickup game where it was just after school with boys and girls, high school age, and she had a severe concussion. Her eyes jiggled like this. She couldn't hold her focus at all. She had to do a year of occupational therapy, of vision therapy, of a million things, and it changed her life. She was a very good gymnast. Soccer wasn't her main sport. She still cannot do a cartwheel anymore, and she used to be a very good gymnast because of the dislocation of the stuff in her ears for the crystals. She gets too dizzy. She has continued trouble with motion sickness. She has a lot of issues tied to this concussion all these years later because she was kicked in the head with a soccer ball by a high school boy instead of a high school girl. It really hurt her physically in a way that my other daughter, who also suffered a concussion in soccer, was injured, but not as severely and not with the long-lasting implications. So members, I know we gotta extend our time here, so I'm gonna wrap it up, but I just want you to know that this is not protecting women's spaces in athletics, in bathrooms, in locker rooms, in education is important. And if we do not do that, we are hurting women and girls. So I hope that you will vote to support the Gilman Amendment.
Majority Leader Long.
Madam Speaker, I move that we waive Rule 1.50 to allow the House to meet past midnight.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion prevails. The member from Douglas, Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's a lot to unpack here, members. Regarding some of the comments that we heard here regarding Leviticus, members, the verse that the representative was alluding to was actually a verse in Deuteronomy 22.5, and I would suggest reading that verse and learning why that verse was in place instead of perverting the Bible, because it had nothing to do with what the representative said it did. Instead, it had to deal with heathen religions. That's what it had to deal with. And I could give you a whole history lesson during that time, but I won't belabor the point on that. But if you're going to quote the Bible and you're going to tell stories, at least get it accurate, okay? Thank you. Let's see here. There was another one. You have made this a bill about trans. You have made this bill about trans. We heard that. In fact, actually, the representative made a post on social media where if Republicans are conditioning themselves for a bonding bill by denying civil rights to trans Minnesotans, then we won't have a bonding bill. So I'm starting to think that maybe this bill actually is about trans. We see you. Yes, or you don't feel seen. We see you. We hear you. You just want to live. We just want to live our lives. You know what? We want to live our lives too. Our daughters want the same opportunities that we did. They want to live their lives. However, this amendment is about feelings. It's about using legislation in our Constitution to force a belief system upon the masses. And if you do not believe in that belief system, there will be repercussions. There will be penalties. And quite honestly, this bill, I'm supporting the amendment here, the Representative Gilman amendment. I'll tell you what, members. If this amendment is not adopted, you will literally be erasing the work that Representative Phyllis Kahn fought for in this body. You will literally be erasing and replacing the Kahn Act, which was the equal opportunity in athletics. It provided for equal opportunity in athletic teams and spelled out when single-sex teams are acceptable. It was in 1975, the Human Rights Act was amended to ensure a pathway of equal athletic opportunities for boys and girls. Minnesota law permitted athletic team membership to be restricted to one sex if necessary to provide both sexes with an equal opportunity to participate. Tax-funded entities such as public schools, colleges, and city recreation programs are required to follow these regulations. The law also says that if two separate teams are provided in the same sport, then they must be treated in a substantially equal manner, including budget allocations. Gate receipts, gifts, and funds raised by booster clubs are exempt from the bill, but Representative Phyllis Kahn was a leader in introducing this legislation, and the state law strengthened the federal Title IX regulations that were declared by the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Members, I have a copy of that bill right here in my hands. The bill that was approved January 4th, 1975. Section 1, Minnesota Statutes 1974, Chapter 126 is amended by adding a section to read as follows: discrimination, athletics, equal opportunity, notwithstanding any other state law to the contrary, in athletic programs operated by educational institutions or public services and designed for participants 12 years old or older in the 7th grade or above. It is not an unfair, discriminatory practice to restrict membership on an athletic team to participants of one sex, if this restriction is necessary to provide members of each sex with an equal opportunity to participate in the athletic program. Provided if a membership restriction on the basis of sex results in the operation of two teams in the same sport which are separated or substantially separated according to sex. Members, not adopting this amendment erases all of that and replaces women with men competing on that same team. The New York Times, April 23rd, 2024. New study bolsters idea of athletic differences between men and trans women. You know what the study's most important finding was? Was that given I can't remember. At any rate, the study showed that men, biological men, have an unfair advantage. And it hurts women when they're competing for scholarships for college. Transgender track runner wins 2 women's events in which race times would have been last place among men. This runner, transgender, won 3 women's events. Both times would have been last in the men's races at the meet, but they were school records in the women's category according to the site that lists the results of the meet. Honestly, members, is this really acceptable? And men, aren't you going to stand up for your girls, for the women? Where are the men today standing up for women? It's absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe that this is 2024. And we are having a debate on the House floor about allowing men to compete against women and allowing those men to take opportunities away from women, from girls. Just the other day, I had a school visit, and I met them out on the Capitol lawn, and I was talking to the class about this amendment that we were eventually going to debate. And as I was explaining to these girls, these young girls, that if this amendment were to pass, Democrats would want men showering in the locker room, men competing in sports, men taking scholarship opportunities from them. And these little girls' faces were aghast. They were crushed. It really broke my heart to see that on their faces. But that is the reality. That is the reality. Planet Fitness. I'm sure many of you have been paying attention to Planet Fitness. They started allowing men to go into women's locker rooms. You know what happened? Membership plummeted. Members, let's not let militant trans activism change the work and undo the work that Representative Phyllis Kahn fought for and passed into law. Let's save the Kahn Act. Let's save women's sports. Let's save women's opportunity. Members, vote yes.
The member for Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. Members, I just wanted to remind folks of how we got here with Title IX and why we're even able to have this conversation. And I ran through this, I don't remember, sometime in past years, but Patsy Mink was she was a congresswoman from Hawaii. And she fought tooth and nail to even get to Congress. She was on the scene when Hawaii became a state, and she tried to get on the state legislature. The Good Old Boys Club kind of pushed her out of that. Then she ran for Congress. They pushed her out of that. She finally did get to Congress. And when she did, she became this huge advocate for Title IX. And I just want to read the language of Title IX that passed in 1972. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. That's what she worked hard to achieve. And in fact, after her death, the Title IX law was renamed the Patsy T. Mink Equal Opportunity in Education Act. And thank you, Representative Gilman, that you want to protect Title IX, and that's on the national level, and on the state level, the con law that Phyllis fought for. Members, this is really common sense. It's really common sense. We've already established that. But I started thinking, how would this practically work out? We know how it would work out in schools and those sorts of things. But I started thinking, we have the Twin Cities Marathon here in the Twin Cities. And in fact, they end here on the Capitol grounds. And I started thinking, well, if this amendment, if House File 37 or Senate File 37 should become law, would there have to be separate categories? There would no longer be able to be separate categories for men, women. And because age is not here, you couldn't have separate categories for ages either. Would the bill's author, Representative Hurd, yield to a question, Madam Chair?
She will. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Hurd, your understanding of the reading of Senate File 37, the example that I gave there of the Twin Cities Marathon, would they be in violation of this law if they got rid of categories for male and female runners and also break it down into categories according to age?
Representative Hurd.
Madam Speaker, Representative Scott, again, I'm not going to be answering hypothetical questions here. I don't know why the Twin Cities Marathon would do that, so if they did, you probably have to ask them.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I read it, I think that it would. For the purposes of this section, state means the state or any agency or political subdivision of the state. So I'm guessing that if someone came along that was a trans person and they didn't fall into a certain category, those categories weren't okay with them, they could sue the Twin Cities Marathon for having categories that were broken down according to sex, to biological sex. That would be my reading and understanding of this. Members, this is, sometimes I kind of have to pinch myself that we're here debating these things. Our eyes do not deceive us. We've been accused on this side of the aisle of being science deniers, and yet we're debating this very basic, yes, there are males, and yes, there are females, born that way, biological makeup, the whole 9 yards. I sometimes I wonder what we're doing here. But members, this is so common sense. People have fought hard. Women before us have fought hard for the things, for the separate categories so we can have our own sports teams. I would have got clobbered in basketball by guys. Clobbered. So members, please support the Gilman Amendment.
The member from Wright, Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, let's try to clear the air on a couple of points. It was stated earlier, there was a statement to the effect of, we're just trying to live our lives. And the object of the we in that statement was the trans community. We're just trying to live our lives. Well, that statement, in the context of what we're doing here today, debating this amendment, has to be interpreted through the impact, through the effect of the language of the underlying bill. This bill does not affect just trying to live your lives. This is not a live and let live bill. And that's demonstrated, that is played out in the back and forth of the debate tonight. It's already been established what the effect of this amendment, if ratified, would be. And it's the imposition upon conscience, the insistence that what you claim must be accepted as truth by people who fundamentally do not believe it. Your claim that goes against sincerely held beliefs that are not merely religious, but are rooted in basic biological scientific facts that we need to step aside. And in the case of this amendment, very specifically, women need to step aside, biological women need to step aside in order to make space for you. And what that demonstrates is that we're really dealing with two wholly irreconcilable claims. There is no way to reconcile these two ideas, which, by the way, is one of the fundamental technical flaws of this amendment. The concept of sex and the concept of gender identity are fundamentally unreconcilable. They cancel each other out. They are matter and antimatter. They are truth and anti-truth. They cannot coexist in the brain at the same time and result in any sort of rational behavior or thought. And so somebody is going to have to surrender. One person or the other, one group or the other is going to have to give ground because these two ideas cannot coexist. And what I'm hearing here tonight is that women are the ones who are going to have to give ground. They're the ones who are going to have to surrender. They're going to have to surrender their spaces. They're going to have to surrender their locker rooms. They're going to have to surrender their restrooms. They're going to have to surrender their sports. They're going to have to surrender their competitive categories in order to make way for your claim on their conscience. Now, I don't have a problem with contending and battling between irreconcilable views, irreconcilable claims. That's what the marketplace of ideas is supposed to affect. But there does need to be an objective arbiter of which claim prevails. And we have not been offered anything along those lines tonight. You know what we've been offered instead in debate on this amendment? You guys are cruel. You guys are mean. Because we say basic, truthful, factual statements about biological sex. Now, because that claim has no weight, that has no merit, that's not an argument, obviously. So you try to give it more weight through the use of emotional blackmail. You're putting us in danger. Danger. There's no danger when a man is in a private space with a woman, a locker room, a restroom. There's no danger when a man is on a sports field, a field of competitive sports with a woman. There's no danger there. Objectively, there is. And so, again, what you're saying is that your claim of danger supersedes women's claim of danger. And they need to surrender, they need to subordinate, they need to get over it. Women have been told in this conversation, in this discussion, in this debate outside these walls that they need to see a therapist so that they can adjust. Riley Gaines has talked about that, about how when they tried to impose men in her spaces and in her sport, she was told she needs to seek professional help. And again, what that demonstrates is this is an irreconcilable claim. One person or the other needs to seek professional help, right? Whoever's in the wrong needs to seek professional help. Whoever's out of sync with reality needs to seek professional help. And what this amendment says is that under the law, we're going to say it's women, it's biological women, it's Christians, it's Jews, it's Muslims, it's anybody who is secular and just doesn't believe that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. They need to get help so that they can reconcile, so that they can figure out some way to shut down their perception of reality and get on board. I, for one, am sick of the emotional blackmail, and I'm not going to succumb to it. I'm not going to back down and allow women to be placed in dangerous situations because you claim that you feel unsafe by abiding by the natural order. Traditional categories, scientific reality. That is not my burden to bear. It is not these women's burden to bear. Somebody has to bear the burden of aligning their perspective with the truth. Somebody does. And what you're demanding, and it is a demand, don't tell me live and let live. Don't tell me I'm just trying to live my life. The underlying amendment to the state constitution demands that the rest of us yield. And it's going to be enforced by law, the highest law of the land. This is not a live and let live scenario. You know what? I would believe you. I would believe you that you want to live and let live if you had accepted the Dameth Amendment. Because that said all persons are equal. That wasn't good enough for you. And I get it. It isn't good enough for you. Because under a legal structure where all people actually do have equal rights, you can't impose your worldview on everyone else. You have to do this in order to have the authority to impose yourself on everyone else.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
I'm sorry, I can't see who's standing. Representative Curran, please state your point of order.
Mason Section 120, equality of members in debate. The language used by members during a debate should be temperate, decorous, and respectful. And with regard to the House of Representatives' policy against discrimination and harassment, that does seek to is committed to creating and maintaining a work environment free from discrimination and harassment in order to create a respectful work environment. The language being used is clearly against our harassment policy, and I ask you to find my point of order well taken.
Members, we got
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
It is, hold on just a second, Representative Engen. It is 12:22. We're trying to get towards adjournment here and come back tomorrow and have some more discussion. It's getting late. If we can just really focus on the language in the bill and try to wrap it up, we could take a break and come back and go at this when everybody's had some sleep. Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you, Representative Curran, for making my point. I'm speaking to the underlying language of this bill and its effect. I'm speaking to the effect that the ratification of this amendment will have on law and on the actual lives of millions of Minnesotans. And how is it characterized? Harassment. It's harassment to say what I believe. Get used to it, Minnesota. That's what's coming. When this is ratified, anytime you speak your mind, anytime you say what you believe sincerely, anytime you repeat the doctrine of your scripture, or just notice basic reality, you're going to be subject to harassment claims. I invite the ethics hearing. It'll be a lot of fun. Ethics, harassment, for arguing to the underlying effect of the bill that you brought. You brought this. We were accused earlier of we made this about trans people. You put it in the language. It's astounding that we have to put this much energy into defending the most fundamental reality, the first thing that men and women knew about each other. We got to put this much effort into defending it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Nobles, Representative Fogelman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to share a little bit about myself. My husband and I have raised a son and a daughter. They both grew up in the same household, but very different levels of skill. When my son was little, we put him in hockey. And when my daughter got a little older, we put her in hockey. Two completely different skill levels. When my daughter was little, she was very good at hockey. She was like the top scorer, when she was little. My son, as they grew in their skill levels, he got very fast, very agile, and was a really good hockey player. He wasn't professional level, but he was good for him. And my daughter was also very good for the girls' team. For some reasons that aren't important to this discussion, she had to play with the boys for a year before she went on the varsity hockey team. And when she got checked by a boy, because that's how the boys play, she got a concussion. She kept going on. She's a trooper. She's a hard player, but I would not have wanted her to compete in the varsity team. My son either. I would not want a girl playing on the varsity team that wasn't my daughter, and I wouldn't want a boy playing on the varsity team with the girls. It's two completely different things. And that's why I wish you would have taken the Knutson amendment to the amendment that clarifies that sex refers to biological sex assigned at birth. Boys are different than girls, and girls are different from boys. And what is wrong with saying that? Nothing. What is wrong with expecting a girl to compete with girls and a boy to compete with boys? Why do you want to erase that? Girls work hard to be in sports, and they want to be competitive. They don't want to be competing against a boy that's bigger, stronger, and faster. I don't know if anybody's watched a hockey game here. I love the Wild, that's no secret. Men are faster than women. It's just the way it is. If you go watch a professional girls hockey team or a professional men's hockey team, it is two completely different skill sets. That doesn't take away anything from the women, and it doesn't take anything away from the men. It just means they're different, and they should not be punished for that. We need to protect the men in this part of things, and we need to protect the women. And we should look at that as a positive thing, not a negative one. So thank you, Representative Gilman, for bringing forward this amendment. We need to protect our girls in sports, and we need to protect our boys in sports. Thank you.
The member from Sibley, Representative Harder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. And I too also support this amendment. And we do need to protect women-only spaces. Do you remember in your younger years you used to have track and field days? And the boys and the girls ran together. Okay, I'm just gonna say, I beat the boys. I have proof, I have ribbons. And as you grow older, you do go on to what's called co-ed sports. Boys and the girls play together, you learn skills. For me, I became a better player in whatever that I was doing. But I do support this amendment. So if we go back to this amendment, and it talks about nothing in this section shall be construed to prevent the restriction of membership on an athletic team or an athletic program or event of one sex if the restriction is appropriate or necessary. And the reason why I support this is because Like as for myself, as I grew older and you become better at a sport, then I should have the competition with the fellow girls that are on the team. It just makes common sense. And women shouldn't have to potentially suffer discriminatory consequences or forced to have competition with males. It just diminishes the opportunity to develop confidence, endurance, competition amongst the same sex. And again, I'm going to go back to when I was young, because I want to pat myself on the back, is that I did beat the boys. It was a lot of fun. And in fact, in high school, when they tried to, run the competition along, they would run the boys and the girls together. I was pretty good at the mile. And anyway, and then they would run different grades together. And I can tell you that the boys that were older than me or equal to my age, well, they beat me. But the younger ones, like the 6th, 7th, 8th graders, okay, well, I left them in the dust. But anyway, I do support this amendment and hope that you will too. Thank you.
The member from Chisago, Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I just want to address a few things that were said today. First of all, I just want to address the fact that we Republicans are somehow making this unequal rights amendment about trans people. Well, we're not the ones doing that. It's in the language on line 1.20. Sex is defined as gender identity or gender expression. That's not us. That's not us. But we are going to address the inherent problems with that when it comes to the hierarchy of protection that we are creating. And we were asked or told, do you want to put trans girls in danger? And I'll tell you, I do not. I absolutely do not want to put trans girls in danger. But I also don't want to put cis girls in danger. I also don't want to put cis girls in danger. And this amendment is specifically about sex-based differences in athletics and allowing membership on an athletic team or in an athletic program to participate on the basis of sex. That's what this amendment is about. So let's talk about why that matters. Let's talk about some recent events. There was a basketball game, Collegiate Charter School in Massachusetts versus Kip Academy. Girls basketball team, there was a trans woman player, a trans girl player on the opposing team. Multiple players were injured, and they eventually forced the charter school to forfeit because all of their players were being hurt. In 2022, North Carolina volleyball player suffered serious injury after a trans woman player spiked a ball at her head and rendered her unconscious. Unconscious. Last year, a cis woman athlete was injured by a trans woman opponent during a field hockey game when a ball she threw at her knocked her teeth out. Knocked her teeth out. So no, I don't want to put trans girls in danger, but I also don't want to put cis girls in danger. I want cis girls to have fair competition. I want them to continue to have the protections of Title IX. I want them to have the opportunity to succeed in elite athletics. I don't want to put them in danger. And we were told there's political value in making this about transgenderism. No, actually, there is actual value in protecting girls and women. There is actual value in protecting sex-based sports. It's not political value. It is actual value for our daughters and granddaughters. This is not made up political value. There's actual value. You want to talk about this threat that we only perceive? It's not real. The threat's not real. We only perceive it. Well, I don't know. Let's look at what happened in Central California Women's Prison, where a trans-identified inmate was transferred back to the men's prison after being charged with rape while in custody at the women's prison. Don't tell me that the threat we perceive is not real. How about Jane, who was in a domestic violence shelter and who had actually self-reported that she was fine with transgender people being in the facility because she had never had a negative experience. She was fine with it until this happened. Until she went back to her room one night and the transgender woman was standing in the hall outside of her room, completely naked, except for a bra that she was holding, and modeled her body full-length mirror near Jane's door. This male body was fully intact and not covering genitalia in any way. And this is what Jane said: I froze and never made direct eye contact. A part of me died. I went into my room and locked my door. I kept telling myself I had a door that locked. In my mind, I shut down. There was so much fear. Do not tell me that the threat we perceive is not real. We have a duty to protect women-bodied spaces. And when it comes to this particular amendment, ensuring that we can have sex-based sports, not only is it for physical safety, and I just gave a number of examples where this matters, it is real, it is not a perceived threat, it is real. But we're talking about membership on an athletic team or in an athletic program. And I would also say, when I think about Jane's story, I think about my 16-year-old daughter, my 18-year-old daughter. But my 18-year-old daughter's a little sassy. My 16-year-old daughter, her teachers describe her as an angel. She's about the sweetest, without guile, 16-year-old you can imagine. I know it's hard to imagine coming from me. But she really is an angel, and she is innocent, and she is sweet, and she does not need to see a penis in the locker room. She does not need to see male bodies in a locker room. She doesn't, and she shouldn't. She should not have to do that. We should not subjugate her rights and elevate transgender women's rights above her rights. That's what this is about. Let's vote yes on the Gilman Amendment. Let's provide a little more equality for women in this unequal rights amendment that we are trying to pass off this floor.
The member from Meeker, Representative Gilman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This amendment, the A13, is an issue of justice for women and children. It allows the preservation of separate sports teams based on biological sex. One thing it would do is would ensure sports such as powerlifting competitions separated by biological sex could continue and not constitute discrimination as ruled by a Minnesota district court. Clarifying the ERA does not constitutionalize males to colonize women and girls' sports. Republicans believe in equal rights for all. And tonight what we heard is the Democrat ERA does not provide for them. All means all. And I hear you and see you, and it's very discouraging to hear things tonight that we've heard, and we will have more conversations another day about this. I am very passionate about this, and I'm curious to know how many girls have to lose titles, lose their spot on the team for girls' rights to be significant. One girl harmed by males taking over is one too many. Please vote for the A13.
The clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Members, please vote. Will the clerk please call the names of the members voting remotely?
Acom. Carroll.
Carroll, aye.
Carroll, aye.
No, we're voting no.
Newton.
Carroll, no.
Carroll changes from aye to nay. Newton.
Newton, no.
Newton, no. Acom.
Acom votes no.
Acom, no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 61 ayes and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. Representative Long.
Madam Speaker, after 7 hours of debate, I move that Senate File Number 37 be laid on the table.
Representative Long moves that Senate File 37 be laid on the table. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The bill is laid on the table.